Hey, how's it going, everyone? Freddie Joachim again. Oh, let's just clear it up. It's pronounced Joachim. It's not Joachim. It's not Joachim. It's not Joachim. It's not Joachim. I hear that a lot now for some weird reason, but it's Joachim. It's German, or Joachim. My father, his father and grandfather are German. So yeah, that's what it comes from. It comes from Saint Joachim, the patron, or the father of the Virgin Mary. But yeah, let's just clear that up now. Joachim. But yeah, I'm just gonna try to quickly talk about how I do my Ableton live sets. If you can see in front of me, sorry I don't have another angle to this. I had a bunch of bugs for this video. I have the Machine Micro 2 as well as the DJ Tech Tools MIDI Fighter Twister. And I'm running the Ableton script along with Ableton 10 for this one. When I do my live sets, I usually do it with Ableton. In the last maybe month or so, I've been trying to incorporate more hardware into my live sets. Meaning like the MPC, or sometimes I'll run like an external synth that I can play stuff over into my live sets. But for me, it's a little bit difficult to kind of translate what I do in the studio into kind of like a live performance setting. I think the way Ableton is set up is really good for like house music or more electronic music, where there's just like a constant rhythm happening. And then people can kind of remix stuff on the fly. But I feel like with hip hop, or what I do basically, it's a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't, for me, the stuff that I make, it doesn't really translate too well into kind of live sets. I know a lot of other DJs and whatever producers can do it really well, but just me personally, this is something I've been struggling with since I've been doing live beat sets. But the way I kind of have it set up is DJing in a sense. If you can kind of see on the screen, I have like a column A of beats and then a column B of beats. And if you kind of look at it as turntables, I have a turntable A and turntable B, and I kind of transition back and forth into different songs, or beats in this case. I also have a few other columns here where I keep other beats, and that's where I can kind of swap beats out on the fly. If I feel like something needs to be changed, or I don't really want to play a particular song, I can kind of swap it out with a different song. So I just kind of have these like in the dugout, so to speak, just to kind of work as like designated hitters. And then a few of these other like columns where you don't see clips in, these are basically like drum racks with sounds on them. So I can play the drums along with kind of pre-edited versions of some of my beats. So some of the beats don't have drums, so I can play the drums along with it. And some of the beats don't have like what's it called? Let me see if I can go down here. Whoops, wrong one. Some of the beats don't have like certain sections of the song, or not sections, but certain elements of the song. And then I can just play them live on here. Just play along with the song. Like I said, what I do in the studio, it's hard to kind of translate that into kind of a live beat setting, because there's so many elements kind of just stacked on top of each other. So for me to play all of those elements live would be just completely difficult for me personally. Like I can't really play the drums and the keyboard at the same time, or I can't play like a certain section of the drums and then another sample on top of that. I just personally, for me, I can't do that. I know there's like a few other like MPC kind of beat makers and Ableton beat makers where they can drum and play something else at the same time, but I just can't do that. And some other stuff is just like, when I make it in the studio, like I'm playing like a live guitar, so it's kind of like hard for me to kind of just play a live guitar like in a live setting. So yeah, but yeah, that's kind of just how I have it set up in Ableton. When I usually go on tour, when I do like European tours or tours overseas, I keep my setup pretty minimal as far as hardware. So in the past like couple of years, this is kind of like my main setup is like a small controller like the Machine Micro, where I can kind of control Ableton, and this MIDI fighter twister, which I use basically for effects, to trigger effects, to turn effects on and off, and to adjust certain parameters within those effects. What I don't have pictured is like an iPad running Touchable, and I basically just use Touchable to launch clips and maybe kind of do XY pad stuff like, you know, flangers or phasers, as they're easy to do. But if I'm doing shows like locally in LA or Southern California, San Francisco or whatever, I'll bring my Ableton Push along with me, only because it's local and I feel like I don't really have to baby it so much. But then when I go overseas, I just kind of want to keep the Push at home because it's such a large unit. And, you know, if you're traveling a lot, like trains and planes and having to go everywhere, you want to keep your setup somewhat minimal. So this is kind of like the base of it, just like these smaller elements, including the computer. But let's just go ahead and get into it. The way I kind of have the MIDI fighter twister mapped out, sorry I don't have another camera angle here, but this is kind of what you see it. The controller comes with software where you can map pretty much or adjust how each of these knobs and buttons kind of performs, and then you can customize how you want it to kind of to look, and kind of, I guess, you can program certain things on here. But I have these kind of just like mapped to certain effects within Ableton. I keep most of my effects on the master bus, and I just kind of turn them on and off. If I push these, if you can kind of see the lower left on the computer screen, you can see that beat repeat, that's one of the effects, is getting lit up whenever I push the encoder down. So that activates the effect, and then when I kind of push or turn the knob while I'm holding it down, it adjusts that grid. So you can kind of see right there. Same with this one. This is like an Effectrix. Effectrix is a plugin. It's basically a bunch of effects that I use, and I use kind of like the looping effect as well as a few other effects on here. But look into that as well, Effectrix. And then most of the stuff is just like Ableton, a stock kind of effects and plugins. This is the vocal fun effect. This is basically a beat repeat, but it's just like a different variation of that beat repeat, and I can kind of still affect certain parts of it. The grid's getting bigger and smaller. Yeah. And then I just basically have a whole bunch of effects on here. And then this last knob here is, if you can kind of look towards the master bus here, where I'm kind of circling, is the crossfader. So since I separate most of my tracks through A and B, I can kind of use this knob as a crossfader to go through A and B. So this would be A, and then this would be B, and back and forth. So I can kind of transition between two different songs, kind of just like DJing in a way. But if we go to pattern here, this is basically a reflection of what is on Ableton, and we can just kind of play something out here, and then I'll try to show you how I trigger effects on here. So like I said, some of these tracks are just completed tracks with no kind of editing, and some are missing elements where I can kind of play along with it. Here, you can maybe see if I hit master here. Okay. So if we go back, same with this one. Same with this one. See, this is a bunch of different effects on here. And I kind of have like this high pass filter. And then when I push it, it goes back to 0. So you can turn it and then disengage it by pushing it. And this is like a low pass filter. And then disengage it by pushing it. So you can actually bank through, is it this way? Something like that. Maybe I don't have the other bank set up yet. Okay. So you can kind of bank through a bunch of different ones. So you're not just stuck to these 16 encoders and pushable encoders. You can kind of bank through them. So there's I think 3 or 4 pages worth of 16 encoders. And you can also use this you can pretty much MIDI map anything to this. So if you wanted to trigger clips with this, you can do that. If you wanted to just kind of trigger other things, or kind of just use this as something else to trigger like samples, you can do the same thing. And then the way I have kind of some of these other tracks set up is like I said, they're missing like drum elements, so I can drum along with them. So let's take this one for instance. If I go here and I go to pad mode, so this one is like basically missing the beginning part of the drums. So I can kind of drum along to this. So I won't play anything so you can kind of hear what's happening. So there's no drums here. It's just basically the sample and all the other elements without the drums. Okay. But if we kind of come back into it, I can play the drums along with this. So the way I kind of have this is I'll play the drums for like 8 to 16 bars, something like that. I don't know, some loop, and then after that the drums will kick in. So these are all kind of pre-edited. See, and then the drums come in right after that. So I don't have to play this. I can kind of prep the next song, which will be this other song. So I'll go into pattern mode here. Oops. Or I can even trigger clips directly from Ableton. You can kind of see, you can kind of scroll around with this thing as well. And then if I push it, I can scroll up and down. So you can kind of see that blue rectangle that's kind of selecting certain things. This is basically how I navigate through. Oops. So I know this green one is playing the current track. I can trigger effects. And then I can kind of slowly bring the crossfader into the next track. And it's like the next track. You know, I kind of do it differently just depending on the track. Sometimes it's not so abrupt. Sometimes it's kind of like a smoother transition. Sometimes it's just like it hits the next song. It just depends on the track, you know? And I kind of have these like mapped out the way the vibe is. So it kind of starts off slow. For me, personally, this is just coming from a DJ standpoint. Usually I'll start off kind of like a slow burn, and then like the middle parts, it's like peaks and valleys. You just kind of like being in the pocket. It's like DJing, you know? Just kind of build up and then kind of bring it down again, build it up, it's peaks and valleys. the next song. This one's kind of coming in a little bit slower. With like a delay. And then it comes into the next song. It's like DJing. Some of these I don't even know what's mapped. And say like I didn't want to go into the next song, meaning like I didn't want to go to the song right adjacent to it. I wanted to go somewhere else. So I can kind of come down here, push it down. I kind of keep a little bit of room for me to stop the next track if I need to. And I know that this ride track will be kind of like the next song. Say I want to go into that one. I know that it's right there basically because this is like a stop track. So we'll kind of just play with this one. Bring that low pass filter in and see we're already into the next track with that filter, and then we can kind of bring the track in, and then a needy cat comes and ruins the whole thing, ruins the whole set. But yeah, that's pretty much how I kind of map my Ableton sets out. And then, like I said, I have a few tracks over here where if I want to kind of just swap them out, I'm able to. And then, yeah, like I have a few other elements from other songs that I can play. Like this one basically is horns. So let me just stop this real quick. So this one, Backyards, if I play it, it's missing some of the horn elements. If I go here and go to pad mode, these are the horns. And if I wanted to remix it, actually don't want to play the whole song of that. But yeah, that's pretty much how I kind of like map out my sets. I mean, like I said, it's still kind of a work in progress. It's been a work in progress for like years upon years since I started doing live sets. And like I said, you know, to reiterate, like translating what I do in the studio is a little bit difficult for me to put into kind of like a live context, especially with like hip hop music. I mean, yes, I could. Most of these tracks are kind of completed, meaning like I'm just kind of triggering effects. But that's because some of these tracks I've actually lost sequences to, so I can't like kind of revisit them in Ableton to kind of edit it for live a live set. And then others, you know, like the more newer tracks, some of the older ones, I can kind of edit since I still have the sequences. And then make it more, you know, just take out elements so I can kind of play them live. And I do that because I don't want my sets to be very boring. I know that it's kind of weird, like having beat sets is just weird for me as a producer. If I'm just kind of standing up there and just kind of playing songs, I just didn't want it to be like me just standing there, you know, playing songs like I would play through iTunes or something. sometimes I kind of incorporate beat sets into my DJ sets. They kind of go hand in hand. That way I can kind of still DJ and play the music that I want to play, because it's weird playing your own music, to be completely honest. I kind of just don't like it sometimes. But I know that's what people, when they come out to see me, that's what they want to hear. They want to hear my beats as opposed to me just DJing other people's songs. But me personally, I like to play other people's music rather than my own. So the beat sets and the DJ sets kind of go hand in hand, so people can kind of get the best of who I am, like, you know, me being a producer as well as being a DJ. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's pretty much, like I said, I'm still trying to like work it out as far as like incorporating hardware into my beat sets, because it's mainly software based, meaning like it's mainly Ableton. I'm trying, since I've been on the MPC Live for a while, I kind of want to incorporate that into my DJ set or my beat sets, because I can kind of do stuff on the fly as far as performance wise on the MPC Live that I couldn't do on my older MPCs. But yeah, I'm still trying to work out the kinks on that one. And then yeah, hopefully I can kind of come out with something more solidified in my future sets, meaning like I can bring a synth along with me, like a keyboard. I can bring, I could bring a keyboard, I can bring like MPC Live, I can bring software, and kind of just incorporate all of that stuff into one, and hopefully it can kind of sound cohesive, rather than me just kind of standing up there and just pushing buttons, because I know that can be kind of tiring at times, and I just kind of want to be better as a producer and a performer, because I'm not a performer at heart, honestly. I'm just more of like a home producer that, you know, can kind of maybe step out of my comfort zone and get into more of a live elements kind of thing. And I didn't want to just play my beats like just DJing as well, because I don't know, it's kind of weird. I feel like I can kind of do more just doing beat sets. But yeah, thanks again for tuning in and learning the origins of my last name. Let me end this podcast or video by playing the songs of my people. But yeah, thanks again for tuning in. Peace.